The haunting sands of Gilgo Beach hide a chilling secret. From the early 1990s until 2011, this remote stretch of Long Island, New York became the dumping ground for a serial killer who preyed upon vulnerable women. The case, spanning decades, has left a mark on the communities of Suffolk County, with echoes of fear resonating far beyond its borders. In December 2010, the first grisly discovery was made. Police searching for the desolate coastline near Gilgo and Oak Beach uncovered the remains of 4 women, soon to be known as the Gilgo Four. Their bodies were found within a quarter of a mile of each other, revealing the horrifying reality of a serial killer at work. These women, like many others who would be discovered in the months to follow, were sex workers who advertised their services online. The search that led to this gruesome find was initially prompted by the disappearance of Shannon Gilbert. Though her remains would not be found until a year later, her tragic case cast the spotlight on a sinister pattern emerging along Ocean Parkway. Hello, I'm John Cordray, and I'm a licensed mental health therapist, and today I will be analyzing Rex Heuermann, the alleged killer of the Gilgo Four. I will provide details of the case and then provide my analysis and give feedback on the aftermath of the crimes. Welcome to Inside Killer Minds. As the investigation continued, more bodies were unearthed. In March and April of 2011, 6 additional sets of remains were found scattered across Suffolk and Nassau counties. These discoveries hinted at a much longer timeline of terror, with some remains predating the 4 victims found in December of 2010. Heuermann had been operating undetected for years. For over a decade, the case remained shrouded in mystery, with families of the victims demanding answers and justice. The investigation, fraught with challenges, finally took a significant turn in 2024. On June 6, Rex Heuermann, a resident of Massaquoi Park, Long Island, was charged with the murders of 6 women. Among his alleged victims were the women of the Gilgo Four: Megan Waterman, Melissa Bartholomew, Amber Costello, and Maureen Bernard Barnes, along with Jessica Taylor and Sandra Costilla. The victims: Maureen Bernard Barnes, age 25. Maureen Bernard Barnes, a 25-year-old mother of 2 from Norwich, Connecticut, faced a harsh reality of life when stable employment eluded her. A seasoned telemarketer by trade, she turned to sex work to keep a roof over her children's heads. Maureen had left the sex industry, but returned to it after receiving an eviction notice. On June 9, 2007, she set out for New York City, telling friends she planned to spend the day there. Tragically, she would never be seen alive again. Maureen's body was discovered in December 2010, 3 years after she vanished, found bound with 3 leather belts, one of which had the DNA of Rex Heuermann's wife. Her death became part of the wider investigation into the Gilgo Beach killings. Shortly after her disappearance, a mysterious phone call provided a fleeting hope. Someone claimed to have seen Maureen alive in Queen's brothel, but the caller never followed up, and her fate remained a mystery until her remains were uncovered. Maureen's 7-year-old daughter was left to grow up without her mother, a tragic consequence of this unsolved crime. Melissa Bartholomew, age 24. Melissa Bartholomew was just 24 when she vanished from the Bronx in New York. Originally from Erie County, New York, Melissa had been living in the city and working as a sex worker under the alias Chloe. On the night of July 12, 2009, she met a client, deposited $900 in her bank account, and attempted to reach out to an old boyfriend. That was the last time anyone would hear from her. A week later, Melissa's 15-year-old sister, Amanda, began receiving disturbing phone calls from a man using Melissa's cell phone. The caller mocked and insulted her, asking Amanda vulgar questions. Over 5 weeks, the calls escalated, culminating to a horrifying revelation that Melissa was dead. Though the police traced the calls to various locations, including Madison Square Garden and Massaquoi County, they could not identify the caller. Melissa's remains were the first to be discovered during the search for Shannon Gilbert, marking the beginning of the Gilgo Beach investigation. Megan Waterman, age 22. Megan Waterman, a 22-year-old mother from South Portland, Maine, found herself trapped in a dangerous world. On June 6, 2010, she vanished after placing an ad on Craigslist as an escort. Staying at a motel in New York just 15 miles from Gilgo Beach, Megan told her boyfriend she was going out and would call him later. But that call never came. Her body was discovered in December 2010, one of the several victims linked to the Gilgo Beach serial killer. Megan left behind a 3-year-old daughter who waited in vain for her mother's return. Megan's tragedy story highlights the vulnerability of those caught in a web of exploitation. Their lives often cut short the most brutal ways. Amber Lynn Costello, age 27. Amber Lynn Costello's life was marked by hardship from a young age. Born in Charlotte and raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, Amber struggled with drug addiction that began in her teenage years after a traumatic childhood event. By the time she disappeared at age 27, Amber had moved to West Babylon, New York, where she lived with other heroin users and worked as a sex worker. On September 2, 2010, Amber received a call from a man offering $1,500 for her services. She went to meet him, but never returned. Witnesses later described the man and his vehicle, a Chevy Avalanche, details that would become crucial in the investigation into Rex Heuermann. Amber's family, believing she was in rehab, did not immediately report her missing. But when her body was found months later, the tragic truth of her fate was revealed. Who is Rex Heuermann? In July 2023, the tranquil communities of Long Island were shaken to their core when Rex Andrew Heuermann, a 59-year-old architect from Nassau County, was arrested in Midtown Manhattan. This unassuming figure, who had lived much of his life in Massaquoi Park on the south shore of Long Island, was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder. The charges were tied to the brutal deaths of Melissa, Megan, and Amber, victims of the notorious Gilgo Beach serial killings. But the revelations didn't end there. Heuermann was soon named as the prime suspect in the death of Maureen Bernard Barnes, and by January 2024, he was officially charged with her murder. Then, on June 6, 2024, in a shocking development, Heuermann was arraigned and charged with the murders of Jessica Taylor and Sandra Costello. Costello's death had not previously been linked to the Gilgo Beach case, raising chilling questions about the potential scope of Heuermann's crimes. Despite the mounting evidence, Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Authorities also began investigating Heuermann in a connection with the 2000 death of Valerie Mack, adding yet another potential victim to the list. How did Heuermann manage to evade capture for so long? Heuermann was a longtime resident of Massaquoi Park, living an outwardly ordinary life. Since 1987, he had worked in Manhattan, blending into the city's hustle and bustle. But beneath this facade of normalcy lay a man whose actions would eventually place him at the center of one of the most infamous criminal cases in New York's history. The investigation that led to Heuermann's arrest began to intensify in March 2022, when a crucial piece of evidence came to light. A Chevy Avalanche vehicle, registered in his name, had been linked to one of the killings by a witness. The connection set off a chain of events that would unravel the dark truth about Heuermann. Investigators discovered his digital footprint, discovering that his cell phone records placed him in contact with 3 of the 4 victims. An email account linked to Heuermann had been used to track the investigation's progress online, and court records revealed a disturbing pattern of internet searches, including sadistic materials and images of victims and their relatives. But it was the forensic evidence that would ultimately tie Heuermann to the crimes. DNA testing provided a potential match between Heuermann's DNA obtained from a discarded pizza crust and a hair found on burlap used to wrap one of the victims. Investigators also found a match between hairs collected from 3 of the victims and DNA samples from bottles discarded outside Heuermann's home. Notably, Heuermann's wife and children were out of state during each of the killings, adding another layer of complexity to the case. In a chilling new development, authorities have uncovered a document that sheds light on the dark mind of Rex Heuermann. The document contains references to torture, captivity, noise control, and what is disturbingly referred to as playtime. Prosecutors now allege that this document serves as a blueprint, laying out Heuermann's intent and the methods he may have used to carry out his horrific crimes. As the investigation continues, the full extent of Rex Heuermann's crimes remains uncertain. Yet his arrest has brought a long-awaited breakthrough in the Gilgo Beach case, offering a measure of hope and closure to the families of the victims. The story of Rex Heuermann serves as a stark reminder that evil can hide in plain sight. My analysis. Rex Heuermann was a family man who worked a normal 9-to-5 job as an architect. Heuermann was married for 27 years, and by all appearances, Heuermann looked like any other family man. He had a good job, a family, a home. What he does not look like is a deranged psychopath. Yet he was arrested for the murder of multiple women. Described by former classmates as an awkward loner, Heuermann was a figure who evoked both pity and fear. I was really scared of him, recalls a former classmate who attended high school with Heuermann. He was the type of guy who, if he snapped, could really hurt you. Classmates remember Heuermann as a disillusioned and misguided young man, someone who seemed perpetually out of place. He was everybody's punching bag. He got picked on a lot. He would take it and just walk away. But there were also moments when Heuermann seemed pushed to his breaking point. "I've seen him pushed to his limit," a classmate said, hinting at the darker undercurrents that may have been brewing beneath Heuermann's seemingly passive exterior. Now, decades later, the image of that awkward, bullied teen has been replaced by the chilling reality of a man accused of unspeakable crimes. The aftermath. The women whose lives were cut short along Gilgo Beach each had their own stories, their own struggles, and their own dreams. They were mothers and daughters and sisters, human beings deserving of dignity and safety. As the investigation continues, we remember them not just as victims, but as individuals whose lives mattered. Their stories, though marred by tragedy, will not be forgotten. As authorities continue to investigate, Heuermann is also being scrutinized for his possible involvement in the 2000 death of Valerie Mack, raising further questions about the extent of his crimes. But even with this breakthrough, the case is far from over. Questions remain unanswered, and the true scope of the horror that unfolded along Gilgo Beach may never be fully known. The Gilgo Beach serial killings stand as a grim reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most unsuspecting communities. The impact of these murders will likely result in a range of mental health issues for the victims' families, including PTSD, depression, anxiety, prolonged grief disorder, major depressive disorder, and social phobia. The emotional scars left by these murders will take a long time to heal. And it's my hope for the families of the victims and Heuermann's family to seek professional help from a therapist to learn how to cope with this intense loss and tragedy. Inside Killer Minds examines the life of some of the most infamous psychopaths in history, along with others who remain largely unknown. Psychopathy is a more widespread mental health condition than many people realize. It's twice as common as schizophrenia, anorexia, or bipolar disorder, and as common as autism. And approximately 30% of the population shows some level of psychopathic traits. Currently, there are no medical tests, brain scans, blood tests, or genetic screenings that can diagnose psychopathy. Those with higher levels of psychopathy are twice as likely to commit severe violence and horrific crimes. Yet they can also appear friendly, intelligent, charming, and ordinary. You may not even realize you've encountered a psychopath.